Good morning, investors and traders. This is Naeem Aslam. If you guys can hear me well, and if you can also see my screen, please give me a sound check by saying yes or no. So once again, if you can hear me well, and if you can see my screen, please do give me a sound check. Okay, great. Thank you, Simon, and thanks everyone else for your answers. We really appreciate that. Today's masterclass is a very, very important one from the perspective because we are not only going to talk about Bitcoin, but actually what is happening with the entire landscape of cryptos, because many of you would have known, a lot was going on in relation to Terra and how Terra has really dented the overall sentiment in the market. So today, we're going to talk about everything in relation to that and then how that is really influencing markets, especially Bitcoin, and where the prices are really heading, because obviously everything happened at a time frame when the crypto sentiment, generally speaking, was quite down. So let's begin the conversation. Bit about myself. My name, as I mentioned earlier, is Naeem Aslam, and I work as a Chief Market Analyst for AvaTrade. My wealth of experience spans well over 15 years. Many of you may have seen me on Bloomberg and on CNBC television, where we do our regular contribution, and the Twitter handle is in front of you. Now, speaking of the social media channels, here are social media handles for Twitter, for Telegram, and of course for YouTube as well. The recording of this particular segment will be uploaded on YouTube, so you can always go and see another value. Now, something that I wanted to bring to you, AvaProtect, available on AvaTrade Web Trader and the AvaTrade Go app. Basically, with AvaProtect, you can purchase protection against loss for a defined period after opening a position. If the protection ends and you have an open position that is losing, AvaTrade will reimburse the loss directly into the trading accounts. The only cost is, of course, the AvaProtect fee itself. Now, before we begin any further, it is important for me to talk about the risk disclosures and risk warnings. Anything which will be discussed in this particular segment cannot be perceived as advice or not by your risk profiles. So this is purely for education purposes. The full disclaimer is right in front of you. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with your own account managers. Now, the agenda. Now, of course, the agenda or the study questions which are in front of you, these are the generic questions which we cover them in all of our master series when it comes to cryptos, but we have coins and of course, and exactly what using both AvaTrade discuss that how exactly is going on things in relation to that. So first thing first, for those of you who have attended our previous webinars, help us with our first study question by giving really is everyone, can everyone hear well? Because I have people saying that the sound is not too good. I only have one person who has said it so far. Can everyone hear me well? Guys, if you guys can hear me well, please let me know, because it could be just a one individual person's connection wasn't that great. And if that is the case, then obviously, okay, so Hisham, you cannot hear me that well? No, sound is bad. I can hear you now. I can't hear you well. Okay, so it's like some people can hear me well, and then some people cannot hear me well. Is that is the situation across the board? Because if that is the situation, then I'll try to log back in. My sound in South Africa keeps cutting. I don't understand. Okay, let me try. This is why this technical glitch is really happening, and if we can kind of improve that. So give me 1 second, and we will try to do something over here to try to log back and log back in. So maybe that will kind of improve the sound quality in relation to it. Right, okay, how's the sound now? Can you guys hear me well now? How's the sound check now? Because I see everything really green and clear from my side. I don't really see any issues. Okay, great. Okay, so we're back on track. Great. Right, okay. Okay, so let's begin. And once again, what we're going to be focusing on, for those of you who didn't really understand my question before, so we're going to have a conversation on Terra, on Luna. Obviously, a significant amount of wealth was lost in that space. Why that happened, if stablecoins are still very much part of the future, and what does that really entail for Bitcoin and for cryptocurrencies in general. So we're going to have all of that conversation today. So today's webinar, in particular, is quite an exciting one. But as always, some of the study questions are very generic, which we cover in our previous master classes as well. So we'd like to begin the conversation by looking at them. So why don't you guys help us, especially the ones who are repeating these particular webinars, because we have a lot of people who come and then attend these webinars because they wanted to know what are the new price levels which really matter. So the first study question really is, what is Bitcoin, which is the most fundamental question, the most easiest question, because we need to lay down that definition, what is it, and then build the foundation, because obviously we have to take everyone with us in relation to that. So what do you think is Bitcoin? Absolutely right on the money. The first question and the first answer is it is digital currency, which is backed by nothing, and there is no doubt about that. Bitcoin isn't backed by anything, but neither is dollar, right? The dollar isn't really backed by anything as well. And then another answer is that this is the currency of the internet, and people will also think that it's not regulated by any central bank. Yes, absolutely right. So all of those questions are absolutely right. So what really is happening? Video game, David. What do you mean by a video game? That's a really interesting one. What do you mean by a video game? Bitcoin is a video game to you? Right. So the next one is, the next study question is, that's how it started. But yes. Okay. So what is a flash crash? So flash crash is something that we have seen last week for sure when it comes to Bitcoin, because we did see that prices plunging. It seems like there is no tomorrow. So a flash crash is when price begins to fall in this particular direction. That is what we call a flash crash. Seems like there is no tomorrow. Price is going to continue to fall from here onwards, and that's how we specify, or that's how we classify a flash crash, right? So we've seen some of those episodes very recently, and we will go and then talk about that in a lot more detail in a bit. Now, this is the most important study question for today, and that is, what is moving Bitcoin price? Now, generally speaking, when it comes to Bitcoin price, what really happens is Bitcoin prices are they move on the general fundamentals like supply and demand, right? So whether the supply is moving to the upside, or in relation to Bitcoin, the supply is very much limited. So there are only going to be 21 million Bitcoins, no more than that. And then a large quantity of those Bitcoins are already mined. So, that there isn't going to be any supply. Demand, before the recent crash of Terra and Luna, we saw a lot of demand among institutional investors. We saw adoption going into a different territory altogether as well. So, but now, of course, because of the Terra's big fall, the big blown up in that space, the situation has changed significantly, because companies like Coinbase, which is the biggest, one of the biggest crypto exchange, they've started to cut employees. The numbers in the recent earnings didn't really match expectations, and still those data sets or those data numbers aren't really indicating, they're not really showing that yes, there's going to be a lot more better outlook. So that is not exactly what we are kind of still seeing in relation to that. But generally speaking, yes, the factors which really matters when it comes to that is, number one, whether there is a good adoption, whether the adoption is improving or not. Number two, how is that demand really faring? Are we seeing more people who are willing to buy Bitcoin, or are we seeing more people selling Bitcoin, or people sitting on the sideline? In terms of a supply, we know that is very much a straight line. Is not going to be moving from here on there onwards. And the last piece of puzzle is, of course, regulation. In any sort of a scrutiny in relation to that brings an interesting question, and it influences the prices significantly. So that is what really is happening. Now, the next study question is about Bitcoin and gold. Now, generically speaking, Bitcoin is also known as digital gold. Of course, that reputation is massively influenced because now we cannot see the evidence of that, because generally speaking, gold acts as a safe haven asset, meaning when gold prices move higher, it is under those times when we will see that, okay, investors or traders are highly concerned about the current market turmoil, and they wanted to place their money in safer asset, and gold tends to be that one. And of course, they can always park the money in their money in the dollar, in the dollar currency as well, the buy dollar index. But and the same was very much true for Bitcoin for an extended period of time, because Bitcoin used to provide, or still kind of provides, that safety. But since the conflict between Russia and Ukraine that began earlier this year, we have started to see that relation deteriorating, because now the relationship is that when the stock market, the S&P 500 index, goes up, we see the Bitcoin price also moving higher. When the S&P 500 index begins to melt down, or begins to slow, or begins to move lower, we see the Bitcoin price is also moving in the same direction as well. So this over here is your S&P 500, okay? And this over here, what we have is your Bitcoin, BTC. So that is the relationship that we are really seeing now. So when, generally speaking, when gold used to move up, but this is not the case anymore, because gold is still acting as a safe haven, is still providing that element, but this is not really what we see now. So that particular relationship has certainly deteriorated a lot. Now, let me ask this particular question to all of you who are in part of this particular group. Did you guys, or any one of you, had any position in Terra or in Luna? Come on, guys. This is not the time to stay quiet, because this is your opportunity to learn, and we are going to talk in a lot more detail about that. Do you actually guys know what happened with Terra or Luna? Do you know what Terra and Luna is? What are those two particular coins or projects? Does anyone know over here? Yes, absolutely. So stablecoin. Stablecoin is basically a pegged coin. So for every one coin, you can redeem $1 worth, right? So that is what you call a peg coin, just like how Tether is. You know, generally speaking, you know, for one Tether, you have $1 as a backup for that. So you can change of 1 Terra for $1. Now, whether they have the inventory, the full inventory in the dollar, they've been very opaque about that, because we know that they have some dollars, but they have some treasuries as well. Then they have some other liquid and some combination of an illiquid assets as well. But in relation to Terra and Luna, so Luna was the coin which you would mint to get Terra, and Terra was, you know, it was an logarithmic coin which was artificially trying to keep the balance between a UST and, of course, the dollar, right? So both exchange for one for one. So it wasn't actually backed by anything. But having said that, the Luna Foundation, which is part of, you know, Luna, they did begin to buy Bitcoin, and they had more than 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin as a reserve currency. You know, like how if I say that, look, I'm going to give you this piece of paper, you can always come back and then you can exchange that for £1 or for $1, because I have that in my reserve, and then I'll give you that guarantee. That's what central banks do. So the same thing happened with they were trying to do this thing as well. So they were saying that, look, you know, we have so 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, so we do have some sort of a reserve over here, but it wasn't backed like Tether, because Tether says, look, you know, we got X amount of dollars sitting in our account, we guarantee you, and then, you know, that our coin has this value. You can exchange them any time of the day, whenever you want to do that. Okay? So that's pretty much it. People lost a lot of money in this particular session. You know, for the last 2 weeks or so, people lost enormous amount of money really in this, because Terra, the coin used to be $100 plus, and do you know where it is trading now? Can anyone wants to take a guess where Luna is trading now? Because Luna, one coin used to be above $100 not too long ago, only 2 weeks ago. Take a guess where that particular coin is really trading now. It is trading less than a cent. It is trading at 0.00021. So, you know, less than a cent, much fraction of a cent. That is where it is trading now. Now, of course, a large amount of money has been lost. Now, the US regulators can come hard. They've already started to show their teeth. They're not going to forgive these people that easily, and that is creating the entire environment or the sentiment for Bitcoin quite adverse. Remember, Bitcoin was already in a downward trend. We broke below that 40,000 points level, then we started to head towards that 30,000 points level, the 35,000 points level. And when the price was trading in around 35,000 price level, we talked about in our daily videos, and again, the recordings of them are still uploaded on our YouTube video, where we talked about the strong possibility of that moving towards that 30,000 price level. And then guess what happened? It did, you know, and then it broke below that 30,000 price level as well. So things were started to become quite odd for this particular cryptocurrency. And now with Terra and with everything in between, investors and traders are they are more worried about this particular sentiment, and then they think that things are only going to get a little bit more worse from here than anything else. I'm sorry, I don't know where this particular honk is coming, but it is there out there. But nonetheless, that's having a very bad influence in terms of the sentiment among the crypto traders. And now let's begin the conversation by looking at the charts. Now, are you guys clear so far in relation to what we have discussed? Because if you are not, I am more than happy to repeat them and then go over some of the things that we have discussed, because it's important that everyone is kind of on board with this one, because and some of the things may not have made much sense to you guys, but now we are going to look at the price action. We're going to do some really deep analysis on that, so that will make a lot more sense. But in terms of what is Bitcoin and then how it works, you know, why the prices are moving to the downside, what happened in the last few days and the last few weeks, I mean, you guys need to be absolutely certain about that particular aspect of the conversation. Right. Great, good to know that you guys are with me. Now I'm going to bring out the web trader, AvaTrade's web trader. We will begin the conversation by looking at the weekly time frame. So this is the AvaTrade's web trader. That's your weekly time frame. This is where the prices are trading right now. For the last week, you could see that how big that intensive sell-off was, and overall, when we look at this particular sell-off, we see that the prices are moving just in one way direction, started to break from that 45,000 sort of a price level, and that was further a lower high in comparison to the previous high, which was the all-time high. So since forming that all-time high, the prices are just only and only moving in one direction, and that is the direction to the downside. Not a very encouraging sign, but that is what is really happening. Now the question among investors and traders is that how low can it really continue to go from here onwards? Well, there are certain price levels that we're going to be looking at. Now, for example, the consolidation area over here is quite interesting from my perspective. Why? Because this is where that rally kind of really began. Because when we look at this area over here, what we see is that yes, there's consolidation happen over here, but then the price did move to the upside quite sharply. But then again, this area was tested once again over here by the price action, and price continued to consolidate in this area for quite a long period. But guess what happened after that consolidation? What happened after that consolidation, after price forming some sort of a bottom over here, we did see that rally which took the previous high out and the prices were forming. So now the price did come into the same area of that consolidation once again. But of course, the question really is for investors that is it going to continue to move higher from here or not? Because we do see a small bit of a violation already happened in terms of the price action. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to have this area still very much intact, and we're going to keep looking at the price actions with the last week's low, and then we're going to continue to pay attention to this particular price, because what is probably likely to happen is a price will come and then form some sort of a double bottom. If it does, that would be great, because that could be an opportunity. However, if the price doesn't form a double bottom, what is a double bottom first of all? Double bottom is defined as like this one. So this was the first time the bottom was formed, the second time the bottom was formed over here, and then guess what happened? The big explosive moves happened right there. So the double bottoms happen many times in the industry, like first bottom right over here, the second bottom happened right over here, and then after that the price did move substantially to the upside. So they do happen every now and then, and especially on the weekly time frame, whenever they happen, they do have enormous amount of significance, which investors and traders should not ignore. Now, of course, the question is that if the price doesn't really stop over here, where do we go from here to the next level? Well, the next level of consolidation or the area of interest, I know that you guys may be thinking, Naeem, you must be crazy if you're looking at that particular price level. But the honest truth really is that the next area of consolidation, the next area of interest, if the price breaks from its current level, is really going to be coming over here. that area of 20,000 to 15,000 is very, very interesting. Now, in terms of the weak RSI, which is representing, or which is right over here, the last time we did see the RSI reaching to the price level, to the RSI levels where we are now, was back here in here during the COVID crisis, when the price took this sharp turn, and before that it was 2019. So the RSI is really sort of reaching those particular price levels, and traders are saying that, okay, we are going to see some sort of a bounce coming into the market from this particular price level. Whether that will happen today, whether that will happen this week, whether that will happen this month, that's anyone's guess. But the probabilities are certainly out there for that particular trade to happen. And that is why we need to continue to pay close attention to the current price levels where they are. Now, we could, any questions so far before we kind of drill down into a smaller time frame, because that is where I am heading now, because we're going to continue to focus on AvaTrade's web trader rather than on the MT4 platform. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our daily time frame, and we're going to see what is happening over here. Now you could see that the price over here, we're just going to move a little bit, just right here, because that is the low that I am very, very much interested in. Okay, so the low of this particular candle is that what I am interested in. So what I really see is, I see weakness in terms of the price action, because look at the curve, the way that it is doing, and especially the low of this candle has quite a lot of importance. So far the price is respecting and staying above that, but at the same time this was pretty good because we were forming higher lows, but then we had a lower low in comparison to this one. And that sort of changed the situation for us, because now the price has become vulnerable once again. Now the question really is, can today's price action break or respect the low of this one? Because if it does, if it respects this particular price action, then the chances are higher for the price to move to the upside. If it doesn't, then the chances are quite slim for this particular price action to show any direction. Now, if we go a little bit further into details and then look into further smaller time frames, and then we can do that by going into 30-minute time frame, because 30-minute time frame is something that I quite love to see the direction of the price trend and where it is really heading from there onwards. Is what I really see is, I see the price sort of looking at this particular low level, this particular price action, right? So overall the price is consolidation between these particular two lines. Now we formed a double top, just like how the double bottom, we formed a double top. So this is the bearish signal right over here, right? And the other one over here. Now the price failed to form a higher high in comparison to this one. Is that first signal which is showing us the sign of weakness. Now this is telling us further little bit information that the price has started to lose momentum. Now will it respect the lows of this one? If it doesn't, then we are moving to this one, and if that's not respected, then the lows of this particular price action. And after that, really, even when the price will begin to cross below this area of consolidation, all of this area of consolidation, it will be very clear that we are going to move to the downside. And when it will move to the downside and comes into this particular area, what we wanted to see then is that, are we going to see a double bottom forming over here? Because if the price forms a double bottom, that would be great, because then we know then that there are chances of an explosive moves. If it doesn't, then the price will break to the downside, and that means further lower lows in terms of the price action. So I hope all of that kind of made sense for you guys, and this particular webinar was, again, helpful to you guys. Download the app for AvaTrade, and again, the recording of this particular one will be available on AvaTrade's YouTube channel. And feel free to comment anything that you like, and if you're unsure, you can watch it again. Otherwise, you can join us next time on Wednesday on a different topic covering the Master Series. That's all for now. See you guys next time.